Great. So I'd like to kick this off by introducing our panelists for the evening. I'm going to start on the far right, your left, with Aman Advani. He's the co-founder of Administrative Supply. Aman, what do you currently do for them? What's your role day-to-day?
So my role is president, and the idea is kind of focus more on the operations side of the business and kind of making sure that we can continue to survive.
Cool. Next up, we have Justin Hiltz, the CMO of Cupcakes. We will dive right in, after the introductions on why there are no actual cupcakes in the store. Next up, we have,
I'm sorry.
We're holding you personally accountable. Next up, we have Alexandra Grenham of Airy Dry. She's their creative director and a buyer. So we're happy to have you as well. She's going to bring a unique perspective that maybe some of these other guys aren't going to have as much of a creative side for. Maybe not. I don't know. Justin looks like he's got a little bit of bite in it. And last but not least, we have Brian Miller, VP of Global E-commerce Strategy for Rakuten. And they actually recently bought Buy.com in 2009 and also Linkshare as well. So just to kick things off, I kind of wanted to start off by asking you guys, did you start off with ideas for an e-commerce company? Did you start off knowing you wanted to do e-commerce? How did the concepts come about? At the end.
I'll start off with this question because I always find e-commerce panels to be an interesting topic. Just that the alternative to an e-commerce panel would be the idea of a brick and mortar panel, which would be perhaps a lot less interesting. But the reason I bring that up is really that e-commerce is a fantastic channel. It has really low barriers to entry, but I think the short answer is probably not. That as we kind of conceived our idea, which I'm sure many of my co-panelists would agree on, the channel was kind of the second thought of the how. I think the first thought we always start off with when we think about starting new businesses, and a lot of people probably seen the Simon Sinek kind of start with why, that you start off with what you're actually trying to accomplish, and that e-commerce is this incredible how, but not necessarily a purpose within itself.
Awesome. Alexandra, what about you guys? Did you start off with a concept? Did you know that you were going to go into e-commerce?
Yeah. We actually knew we wanted to go into e-commerce. But I had some experience with brick and mortar, and I knew that was really, you can only take it so far. And that doing e-commerce, you could really reach a greater audience and realize the dream, and there's just a much greater potential.
Gotcha. Okay. And for those of you, or for you guys who mostly do e-commerce, do you go directly B2C? Can you guys talk to me about structure? Alexandra, I think you guys are business to consumer, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And what about funding? How did you guys start off getting funded? I know somebody at the end has some interesting.
So we started off with kind of a variety of tools. I think that our initial conception was that coming from a business school, that we would kind of go through this normal Series C, Series A, exit, and that it would be as simple as just kind of going through these really discrete moments of funding, and every other moment would be just kind of working and running your business. What we found was kind of a fun cocktail of other sources. So we started off upon launch taking a small angel round, at the same time doing a Kickstarter launch. So Kickstarter is great. If you haven't heard of it, well, everybody here probably has every shot. It's a great chance to kind of change your cash conversion cycle, bring in cash in before cash goes back out. At the same time, we raised an angel round, and then subsequently raised other angel rounds in addition to debt from a local bank, actually. So I think if you kind of bring all these different sources together, funding becomes much more complex, but at the same time, much easier discussion. Say there aren't just one or two options, there are several different pieces you can bring together.
How did you guys decide to do Kickstarter? How did you find out about it?
For Kickstarter, I think it was just a really good opportunity to launch. I think that we called Kickstarter our launch in hindsight. At the time, it was just, this is a really good tool to help get our name out there. Let's set this goal and see what happens. And it turned out to be a really great month for us. And so forever looking back, we call that kind of moment that we truly launched outside of our own site. Again, a shout out to kind of e-commerce as a whole. The amount of reach you can have in a month as a new company is so much tremendously higher than had we started, let's say, with a brick and mortar store.
And can I just ask, what was the goal and what did you guys end up raising?
The goal was $30,000, which would have been a fantastic month and probably something we could have handled at all, if not easier. We ended up raising $430,000 that month. And you can imagine the slew of operational challenges that come when you exceed your goal.
definitely good problems. Alexandra, you're the creative director. I wanted to chat with you a little bit about what it was like to build a brand for Erie.
Well, it's interesting because when you have e-commerce, you have the opportunity to soft launch and you get to test everything out to a really small market and control how wide you go out. So we really built up very slowly. We didn't have as many SKUs in the beginning to kind of get used to everything, make sure everything was functional, operational, was really customer friendly, and then kind of scale from there. And then also I knew the look and feel were very design oriented and very particular. So, you know, finding the right designers to work with, people you can trust, people you have great communication with is really important because it's also a really big part of your investment. I want to say something about raising money. Can I go back?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Because I feel like this is a really important and helpful, and you spoke to this a little bit. It takes a lot of time and energy to raise money and run the business simultaneously. So you need to sort of plan out, have your person who's raising money and have your person who's running the business. And have that in mind as you get started because it's pretty key to making the whole thing launch.
When you get to be a size like Rakuten, do returns and damages become an issue?
I can only speak for Japan site. Actually, that's one of the first questions a lot of retailers ask me in the US when they're interested in the Japan marketplace. But the return rate is extremely low in Japan, so it's a totally different model than here. There simply is not a culture of buying something, trying it out, and then returning it if you don't like it. Once you've bought it, you know, it's pretty much yours unless the item's broken or there's a misshipment or something like that. But return rate is, you know, I don't have the exact number, but it's well below 1%.
I feel like the moral of the story is start an e-commerce company in Japan. Alexandra, do you have any insight into what returns and damages, like how big of an issue that is for you guys and if you can mitigate it?
Well, we're really lucky. We also have a less than 1% return rate. And
We're not so lucky. Yeah, returns and exchanges are kind of an inherent part of our business. I would say it's less of an issue and more of just something you have to acknowledge and handle when you're in apparel particularly, or there's probably several industries that could claim the same thing. But just yesterday I bought 2 pairs of pants from another company that I love, and I bought it in a medium and a large. And I fully plan on returning one. For my single data point, I'll be a return rate of 50%, doing some rough math. So you know, I think that it's kind of something you come to expect. You come to start to figure out. I mean, hopefully the one I sent back won't be considered a damage, but generally we found is that we kind of acknowledge a certain level of returns. We in fact encourage it by pre-packaging a prepaid return label in every package. That we want people to feel comfortable mimicking the offline experience online by saying, look, online you can try on 2 things and pick the one you like best. How can we kind of extend that experience online and make sure people have the same luxury? So I would say maybe less of an issue and more just something we have to acknowledge and account for and understand will happen and in the right context that we encourage to happen because it does lower the barrier to entry when you know that there's no risk and that the return is an option.
I can't speak on it really. I see the returns come in, but we certainly have some picky customers, but we're also in the middle of changing manufacturers with a lot of things, so we're struggling to find sizing as it stands. So right now we're seeing a higher volume than normal, and it's actually the thing we're really focusing on for 2015 is just settling into a size and sticking with it to avoid that.
You actually bring up a really good point as far as unexpected changes go with supply and manufacturers. Is that something you've run into before? Is this a first-time issue?
We basically, this is our first time. We were basically an American apparel brand for a really, really long time. And we were dissatisfied with their quality control. And you know, their shirts just get mangled in the wash. And so we started looking for new things, and you know, of course, pricing was an issue. We wanted to go cheaper for us, and we recently did some surveys for the first time, and that was the #1 complaint. It was just, we want consistent sizing. That's all we want right now. We will pay more money if you just get us the same size t-shirt every single time we order from you. So.
Gotcha. Aman, for someone who's known for their custom clothing, have you guys had any issues with manufacturers?
Yeah, we've had several. I think that we could list off a number of different issues we've survived. Fortunately, most of the time they've been caught before they go to the customer, but also the benefit of having a generous return policy is that if you know, every now and then they will pass through. It's not a huge risk, it's just more of a time issue, but I think the best example we've got is a batch of 2,000 undershirts that came in with a V-neck. It was, if anyone's seen a Saturday Night Live skit, but the 2,000 shirts that were just totally unusable in any way. If the V's too high, you can actually correct it down, but if it's too low, you're kind of out of luck. So if anyone in this room might have gotten one, we were passing them out like candy because we didn't have to deal with them. But fortunately, the manufacturer, if you kind of build a really great relationship with your manufacturer, you can get through this kind of stuff. So they replaced it as kind of a gesture of good faith, knowing it was an error on their part. What we learned from that issue, and a couple before then, was the idea that we're not on the ground there every day, and we can't be. We don't have the resources or team size to do so. So we kind of learned was there are people who are really good at this. I think it goes back to the fulfillment question that on-site quality inspection may not be the future of our business, but we have to be good at that to survive. So we did found a number of different partner organizations, one in particular, I think was a local called SGS that we rave about, who goes on site to our factory 3 times during the process now and actually checks against what we call a tech pack, basically kind of instruction manual on how the garment should be made, 10%, 50%, 95% of the way through, and checks to make sure that everything's on track so that we're never surprised at the end by saying, holy crap, these are some deep D's. So we learned the lesson on kind of there's somebody that's really good at that, let's employ them to do it, and that if we rely upon our manufacturer for everything, there will be surprises. So how can you kind of, there's enough surprises in the rest of our business not to have to worry about quality.
Now, tech pack, is that something you guys came up with, or is that something that exists in the industry?
No, it's a pretty standard. I mean, it's really a fancy word for kind of instruction manual. Like I said, it'll kind of identify everything from fibers, fabrications, potential issues you might see, detailed shots like how do you actually stitch a button, but also just the sheer dimensions of a garment, which are, to your point, probably the most important of all the information you find in the tech pack is what is the grading rule, which is basically the difference between a small and medium. What should we expect to see? And so making sure that there were not only our manufacturers watching out for that, but also a third party that was watching, on our behalf too.
Know too much about tech packs. They're almost like a spreadsheet illustrator file in a weird sense. It's tons of information on a few pages or many pages that totally dictate what a government should look like and stuff. And I used to have to make them. So
Sounds like fun.
it's not. It's not at all. I'm very happy to be not doing that anymore.
Gotcha.
So.
Now, Alexandra, do you guys manufacture any of your goods, and do you run into any issues?
We do not manufacture any of our goods. We buy everything wholesale. We don't manufacture.
Do you guys have a process of kind of verifying before the purchase on what kind of thing you're going to get into?
Yes. I mean, I generally see everything. I won't, if I haven't touched it, played with it, made sure that it's really high quality, I won't carry it. Because otherwise I'm just absorbing risk that I don't want to absorb. And I should say too, that I used to be a clothing buyer, and that there is a higher markup in clothing than I sell elsewhere than in elsewhere. So the margin is built into clothing, the things about fit models, dialogues, all that stuff that I have to absorb. That I chose to get out of that business. Yeah, we don't. We just go wholesale.
Now, have you guys, any one of you, ever put into place any kind of manufacturer agreement that says, if this is not up to snuff, X is going to happen or Y is going to happen to kind of protect yourselves?
If it doesn't look the way it should be, I send it back.
Okay.
If I don't get what I paid for, it goes back. That's pretty much the agreement, is that I'm paying for exactly what you showed me. If that's not what I get, it goes back to me.
Do you have a good story demonstrating sort of what you do in a situation like that? when someone gives you something that doesn't match up with what they promised you're expecting to get?
Yes, I do. I don't want to badmouth any specific company, so I'll go kind of broad. We sell a lot of things from Europe, and these beautiful Danish globes, and they were heavily packaged. And we sent one to a customer, and I didn't open it and take out all the unbelievable amount of packaging and around the globe. When it got to the customer, it was broken. So then I went back to my warehouse and I opened all the globes and I sent them all back. Because they were all, and I also asked them to absorb the shipping. See,
That's smart.
yeah.
I like it.
I have one more question for all of you before I open it up to Q&A. Maybe Aaron has a question first.
Well, I have questions, but we also want to open it to Q&A, and I'm going to play it on mic.
Perfect. So I have one last question for you guys. Rolling into the holiday season, I'm wondering, how do you guys deal with low peaks or the off-season times? Do you try to use that as a revamping time where you come out with new product, or do you really run aggressive promos and try to kind of keep sales as even as possible? What's the strategy there?
We are currently experimenting with that. We're not like any other brand in our category or genre. We release stuff almost weekly, not at least bi-weekly. There's a brand new product coming out on our website all the time. And me being the one in charge of the website and the marketing, every week it's, here's a new thing. And it stresses me out because I see our shirts that are a couple weeks old rotting on the shelves, and we have to figure out a way to sell them. That usually means lowering the price way earlier than we'd like to. So we're constantly pushing our production schedule to be further apart. Next year we're aiming for 3 weeks between releases instead of 1 or 2. And it's definitely something for me where I would like a few weeks to sell something. I know I can sell it if I have the time to sell it, because we found that if you just send someone an email, they will buy stuff from you. It sounds a little simple, but it's true. I'm sure you're all overloaded with emails from people, but I know those emails work on some of you sometimes. And so for us, it's just like...
Is that your best converting ad unit? Email?
Yes, 100%. It is...
Across the board? Most recently?
Yeah.
By a wide
Sorry,
margin. Sorry, I'm a control freak. Sorry.
So it's definitely, I want more time to push things. So for us, we don't have seasonal anything. It's always new stuff and how do you sell it. So we're trying to take that step back and say, hey, here's a thing that came out a couple weeks ago. You should check it out. And I'll try to sell it to someone who hasn't bought it. It works. It really does.
But the issue that you're referring to specifically, so the other maybe big issue was the idea of having to recreate a supply chain after a campaign. So we've already committed to, there's about 8,000 shirts, and we'd already committed to getting these shirts out the door before we had any idea how we could actually make them. That's kind of one of the downsides of Kickstarter. That happens all the time. So it's not too dissimilar from the camera. Someone bought the camera, all of a sudden you get a camera out and give it to them. So it's actually quite a similar situation, but the particular issue you were discussing was an interesting one. It was our first quality lesson was we were using a sample shop in New York, and we found this great factory in Ventura, California that we loved, and basically said, well, email over the pattern, the tech back, and let's get in production. So 800 shirts later, we go to Ventura to see kind of how things are going, and try a couple on, make sure everything translated properly. It should be kind of a no-brainer. We're engineers. We just send you go there, and everything will work out. These shirts were super skinny, so it's going to sound very reminiscent of the DB neck, and you're wondering how we made the same mistake twice. We did. This is actually the first time, so maybe more excusable. But these shirts were just super, super skinny. And the downside was we had sent out about 150 of these already to customers directly from the factory. So we found people just really open about sharing their experiences. So we would get pictures back of these guys that were just reaching around and trying to button their shirt on. And of the 150 we sent out, I would say at least half sent us a very graphic picture of exactly what happened. felt necessary to prove it. I think being a new company, they didn't know that we were going to stand behind it. So we obviously replaced all 150 of those and truly scrapped the other 650. And unfortunately, there's not much you can't really size down at that point. So learned a pretty harsh quality lesson. You would think we would have never made the same mistake again. You know better.
And your Kickstarter generated how much revenue on this first sale?
The total of the Kickstarter was about 430,000.
Which at the time, this was pre-Veronica Mars, so, which has been a very successful recent Kickstarter of a couple million, but like, these were shirts. So, all right, I'm gonna play Mike guy. First question.
Do you guys make your own products, but you two sell other companies' products, right?
Yes.
So do you do affiliate marketing? You do the click, pay-per-click kind of thing, or how does that work?
So you're asking how we advertise?
No, I'm asking your business model of pay-per-click, which is affiliate marketing. In other words, someone goes to your website, clicks on something they want to buy, and then the originator, the manufacturer, the company that owns the product and makes it, they fulfillment or they send it to you and you get a payment.
Right.
Yeah.
This
So we don't, we actually own the affiliate network. Big Share is part of Rakuten. So, you know, I can't speak really from the retailer perspective, but you know, it's certainly a big part of our business. I don't know, maybe on the retail side, one of you can.
I think there's a couple questions at hand here. One, do you use pay-per-click advertising in your business? And that's probably best geared to Erie Drive.
We have used pay-per-click advertising.
How's it perform?
It's not, I would not recommend it.
Okay, all right. Nobody from Google in the house tonight. Aman, do you guys use pay-per-click, or is it all about creating an audience? And Justin, I asked you this via email. I really want to know, like, do you just have a fan base that keeps buying from you, or do you have to find new customers?
We don't do any kind of traditional advertising. It's literally just me and Milkshake.
That's the beauty of being Johnny Cupcakes, though.
Yeah. So we don't aggressively go after anybody. Our current strategy to gain new customers is actually wholesaling. We should be hitting a lot of Zoomies this year, and hopefully pack some. And we think that we make a product that people fall in love with, so it's in more people's faces. You'll see more business come our way. So.
I'm not talking about advertising. I'm talking about the amount of the company then you get paid because someone clicks on your site and then bought from another company, bought from a product.
So the term there is drop shipping. Are you a market? So Rakuten's a marketplace. Yeah. Rakuten is a marketplace where you don't hold inventory.
That's right.
Right.
So merchants open their own shop on our marketplace that we take a share of.
That's what I meant. So you guys do that.
Yes.
Okay.
I would assume that Aman and Johnny Cupcakes, you guys hold inventory of your product. You said that on the front end as well. You said you.
We hold inventory for like 80%. I buy from, but we do hold inventory.
With guaranteed buyback agreements, or not necessarily? Okay, so you got to move it. All right, next question.
Okay, so on the subject of inventory, what is your shipping window? So when the order is placed, how soon do you ship, and how do you forecast against that?
We have, I think our email receipts say, I think, 5 to 7 days when we're busy, and like 2 to 3, and we generally are shipping same day or next, depending on how busy we are. So.
And then how long does it take you to make a product, the pipeline?
Generally, we can go from an illustration to a T-shirt in about a month. If we're really, really rushed, maybe 3 weeks.
So how do you forecast?
We are very much a small company. We don't have anybody forecasting it for the most part. It's mostly feel and what works for us. So I can't speak.
Aman, do you forecast?
Yeah, so the first answer is usually about a day, either today or tomorrow from similar. But again, that's not us. We're contracting on the actual fulfillment, so the warehouse that holds our inventory also does the pick and pack. Our lead time is pretty different from, so from sketch to shirt. If you pulled that out, it'd be more like a year, a little over a year. So this vest, for instance, releasing on Wednesday next week. Keep an eye on it. We started developing late 2013. About 4 months for actual production time, so from milling all the way through kind of to the doorstep. So we do a lot of forecasting because of this long lead kind of thing. So the downside of having a slow supply chain is that we do have to have a good anticipation of placing orders now that will come to life for, in fact, on December 1st, kind of our PO deadline for summer of 2015. So a lot of kind of predictive analytics to figure exactly how many aviator chinos will we sell in June in 2015, and we have to know that now.
So it's a very metrics-driven company in that sense. I mean, you have to. That's a.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on where in the company, but yeah, I mean, I think metrics are where maybe a better way to do it. We have to kind of know whether there's art to it as well that we've never sold a vest before. How on earth can we expect to know exactly what we'll sell? We kind of have to take some guesses. There is a lot of art or gut that goes into it.
There's that, and then a greater understanding. You really have to know the marketplace and what's going on, and keep an eye on what's trending. If you sell something that's really trendy, things like that, really try to keep a pulse and try to be 6 months ahead if you can. About 6 months.
I'd like to hear from Alexandra on that, because you're kind of an upmarket, aspirational consumer home goods. I mean, I go to your website and I'm like, this stuff's beautiful. Like, so you do a great job curating the product line. Like, I wish that I had more discretionary income to buy some of the things because they're really nice. How do you acquire customers at Erie Drive?
Well, I think it really goes back to knowing our customer and knowing where they are and focusing directly on that customer profile. The whole, I'll just advertise everywhere and see where they are, and no. It's a big world. Know your person. Make sure that when you advertise online and that they see ads, you are representing your brand exactly what they want to see and exactly where you would want them to find you. So it's definitely about building your customer profile. And thank you for coming to our site.
Without the like you said, the big companies like that, if someone were to see Johnny Cupcakes pop up in their feed, they would think we were a cupcake. It actually works against us. Our name works against us in that way. In that, we don't have an inherent understanding of people's minds. We don't understand what we do. So if you saw that, I don't want a cupcake here.
Where's Johnny tonight? I'm gonna kick that guy's ass.
I don't know where he is right now, but he just recently got engaged, so he's probably his fiance. But that's it definitely we have to do that. But the cross-game customers is totally going about now. There's no more Google for us. No more. We don't get any results.
Building on that question, Ministry of Supply recently opened a store on Newbury Street. It's a pop-up shop through the end of the year, I believe. Free socks if you're tweeting #startups. One lucky winner. If I look at my phone eventually, we'll get the shirt. It's called, what's it called? An archive? The archive shirt. I am not the winner, just to preface that. How much is your brick and mortar strategy a part of your overall customer acquisition strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the overall customer acquisition strategy, and we've heard this a couple times already now, is heavily based upon, word of mouth. And it sounds like such a cliche term because it means so many different things, but what it means to us is just we create an experience where people, have something to share. I think the easiest example I can give here is that if we give people more reasons to talk, I think that, this won't matter too much, but that every time we send one of these jackets or vests out, we put it in, custom embossed field notes, black notebook, and all the pockets. We don't advertise it, but when people get it, our hope is that it creates this extra moment of joy or happiness, very kind of Zappos or Tony Shea-esque, that kind of delights people in a way that they didn't expect to kind of exceed whatever they did expect. So it's kind of constantly creating these stories, these moments, these functionalities that they didn't expect, or exceeding whatever they did expect, that excites them enough to hopefully help kind of create the community around them that helps us ultimately survive. So while we do go through Facebook, Google, we do employ the toolbook. I think that no one would argue that that's enough in itself.
Paid Facebook ad campaigns?
We do, yeah. So we do, I mean, everything that you've read about, we do. That's not what drives sales by any means. That's what drives kind of a couple impressions. I think that our quick conclusion is that for a brand like ours, and I'm sure it's different for each of us up here, that somebody hears about us 10 or 15 times before they make their first purchase, and it's usually triggered at the last second by someone saying, oh, have you heard about these guys? They're pretty cool, you should check them out. But then until then, the first several, maybe even dozen, it's us saying, hey, check us out, here's what we're doing. Let's just tell you what we're doing. We never would employ kind of a sales technique, which is here's what we're up to. But ultimately, what would get someone to go from aware to part of the family would be that they heard it from a source that they already know or trust beyond us. And so I think brick and mortar is a great example, not only our own store, but also just started selling with Uniform in the South End. It's a great store. But Gary, who owns the store, has already got this, he's been for 15 years, he's got this great set of customers who already trust him. When they walk in and he says, hey, I know these guys, I kind of believe that everything they say is true, then automatically kind of that trust is then passed on to us. And it's been a much better, as you said, customer acquisition strategy when you go through wholesale than trying to tell people the message yourself. That if somebody, this store, our store Newberry is no different than when someone comes in there, they'll typically have a 20-minute conversation with Steve, who runs the store, and that creates that kind of same energy, emotion, momentum that you can achieve.
And you're kind of winning together. I mean, he's acquiring a customer, you're acquiring a customer. So it's, and the customer's winning.
Yeah.
It's a triple win. Because they walk out with a really great product that, was designed by people from MIT. So.